Hey, welcome back everybody to Every Week English with Josh Golson. This episode we will be talking about men versus women stereotypes. Quite a controversial subject nowadays. It's sort of crazy. Um, this English file textbook, I believe, was written and published in 2017, right? So it hadn't gone as crazy as it is now. Um, Likewise, the grammar for this one will be a very, very important one that even, C-level people struggle to get. It's articles, a, an, the, or no article. And the vocab, well, it's not really vocab, but it's prepositions, right? So we'll get into all that. Don't forget, leave a like, share it around with your friends, and if you would like an English lesson, reach out to me if you've got any questions. You can find all my stuff at everyweekenglish.tilde.ws, or you can send me an email at everyweekenglish@outlook.com. Without further ado, we'll hop into the idioms. We have crying wolf. This comes from Peter and the Wolf, where Peter, he went out to the forest and he shouted, "Hey, hey, there's a wolf over here. The wolf is going to eat me." And so his father ran out with a shotgun, and there was no wolf, right? He just wanted the attention. And so he did it a second time, and the father went out again, and again, there was no wolf, just looking for attention. And the third time, the wolf finally shows up. Peter shouts out for the third time. His dad already knows the routine by now. There will be no wolf. And so his dad does not go out and does not check on him. And Peter gets eaten by the wolf. Right? And so this is about somebody who complains a lot, or says like, "Hey, hey, watch out. I need your help." And so they are crying wolf when they don't actually need it. So you stop believing them, right? The next one is to palm off or pass off something. And this is to pass off something as genuine when it is fake, right? Or when it's no longer wanted. You can think of like knockoff Gucci bags, for example. So fake bags, but you're selling it like they are real. Um, Also, you can palm off people to other people, right? So if you no longer want to be friends with somebody, you say, um, hey, why don't you hang out with this guy? And so you are palming off this friend to somebody else, hoping that they don't come back to you. Um, it's not used very often, actually. Palm off, crying wolf is used a lot more often. And the last one, also we use it often, is has bigger fish to fry, which just means more important work to do, right? So, I got to take out the dogs, but, I've got bigger fish to fry, like making a podcast or like teaching class, right? Just something more important to do. So again, it's crying wolf, palm off, and to have bigger fish to fry. Um, we'll go ahead, hop into um, we'll hop into the grammar of articles. So the general rule of thumb, right, which that's redundant because a rule of thumb is a general rule, um, is if something is specific, you are using the. If you are talking about something that you have already mentioned, you're using the. Or if you're talking about places in a town, superlatives, or you can make something special using the. So you can say, like, um, instead of America, you would say the United States of America. So suddenly it's no longer a continent, it becomes a very specific country, right? And when there is only one of something. So typically you would say the sun, the moon, the Himalayas, the Dnieper, the Rhine, right? So geographic features, that is for the. And if it is random or if you don't know it, you're saying something or talking about something for the first time, then you will use a. And of course, um, if it is followed by an article, right, like a, e, I, sorry, not an article, a vowel, like a, e, I, o, u, sometimes y and sometimes h, if they are soft, but most y's and most h's are hard. So if it is soft, you're using an, right? So like an apple, an egg. If you're British, you don't say huh, hard H, history. You say history. So then you add an history, right? It is quite funny. And if it is hard, like yeah, a hard yellow or yolk, which is the yellow part of an egg, you would say right? A yolk, a yellow car, a car. When it's completely random, the very first time we mention a thing or a person, right? Likewise, when it is expressions of frequency. So like once a week, once a day, twice a month, right? Once a year, that sort of thing. Year, adverb of frequency. And if you're using no article, it's when we're speaking in general for plural and uncountable nouns, like I love flowers, I like eating, with some specific nouns that everybody knows, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, home, work, school, kindergarten, hospital. The British use it for university. In some cities, countries, and continents. Likewise, no article after, at, to, or from, which perfectly, so with these, just whenever you're writing a sentence, and really writing is the best time to learn these. So that's why every week I assign essays to all of my students, and based on what theme we're going over. So for example, Christmas is coming up, so I said, very, very simple, easy, write about what you will do for Christmas, right? How you will celebrate. If we're talking about cities, I would say compare your two cities, right? Or write about the best city, write about the worst city. For example. So articles, even, some C-level, language learners, they still struggle with it, but best way to do it is through writing. And this leads us into the quote unquote vocab, which is about prepositions. So of course, a preposition is a word or a group of words used before a noun, pronoun, or a noun phrase to show a couple of things, right? Direction, time, place, location, spatial relationships, or to introduce an object, right? They are highly, highly idiomatic or colloquial. Although there are some general rules of usage, but quite often it's dictated by a fixed expression. So unfortunately, it's best to memorize the phrase instead of the individual preposition. But just in general, prepositions of direction are to, in, into, on, and onto. For time, it is in, at, and on. So like in the evening, on the weekend, or at 5 o'clock. Likewise for place, right? It is in the point itself. So I'm meeting you in the cafeteria. At is the general vicinity, right? So I'm meeting you at the library. That could be inside of the library. It could be outside of the library. On on is on the surface of something, like I left my glass on the table, and inside, right? Nutri, where it is held inside of something, like I have water in my glass, right? Then we've got prepositions of location, right? Very similar to place, but in is an area or how much of something, at is a specific point, and again, on is a surface. So on's pretty easy. I think in is also pretty easy. Then spatial relationships, we've got quite a few. It's above, across, against, ahead of, along, among, around, behind, below, beneath, beside, between, from, in front of, inside, near, off, out of, through, toward, under, and within. Right? Quite a few of those spatial relationships. So a very good idea is to talk about where do you have things in your room, right? So for example, I have business cards inside of a box, right, sitting on my desk, and my desk is inside of my bedroom, right, in the top right corner of the room. Yeah. Or my wardrobe is to the left of my door, right? And above the wardrobe, I have Warhammer cases for storage. I have storage, things like that. And then you have tons of prepositions following verbs and adjectives. Again, it's best to just remember the phrases. So that's why we have phrasal verbs, and typically those contain a preposition with them. Yeah. So two really good things: articles, prepositions, and then we'll hop into some of these questions. So stereotypes between men, women, and children. But do you think it's true is the first one. So that men make better bosses than women. I've had it both ways. When I worked at the Container Store, I had very good female bosses, right? Very compassionate. They understood everything that I was going through. They let me have time off, and again, this is when I was dating Yulia, so they even gave me, time off to go and visit her. Though it was quite funny because I visited. I took off so much time that eventually they were like, "You got to stop doing this." I was like, "Okay, goodbye," right? And I quit. That was the biggest thing. Yeah. So, it I think it really depends on the person. I've heard from a lot of lady students that they honestly they don't like working with other women, and it turns into what's called a den of vipers. And so everybody is very passive aggressive, and they'll be friendly to your face, but then talk about you behind your back. Versus typically with guys, they just tell you straight up, right? For the most part, or if they are good, they will tell you straight up. And of course, if it's a woman, and hopefully they'll tell you straight up, but typically not so much. But in my experience, I've had really only good bosses, I think, and yeah, again, I've been very lucky. I had one quite bad guy boss when I was working at Giant Foods. And this was, yeah, and I also had a bad woman boss there. So the head manager was a guy, a very thick, very fat guy, very robust. And so he didn't take any excuses from anybody, and he wouldn't cut anybody slack. So, for example, like my university schedule changed and I couldn't show up to shift. And I told him, like, I'm going to university is priority. And, I quit basically because of that. He said, no, Giant is the priority, which is crazy. A minimum wage job. Likewise, the woman boss there was again, she was the boss of the produce department where I worked. Dealing with the fresh produce like vegetables, fruits, things like that. And she was the daughter of one of the vice presidents of a giant food corporation. So she could basically do whatever she wanted. And it was quite bad for morale, and people didn't really take her seriously because they knew that she had just gotten the job based on nepotism. All right. Nepotism is when you hire a family member or hire a friend, right? That's it. I know in America this is called networking. Nepotism has a negative connotation, while networking has a positive connotation. So typically outside of America, there's a lot of nepotism, but inside of America, there's a lot of networking, right? It's quite interesting that. And then likewise, I work with, like, most of my students are women. I would say 90% of them. So I would say people who want to study, it's mostly women, right? And in the academies, I think now in the States, probably 60% women over men, maybe even 70%. A lot of guys are dropping out. Um, there's a very anti-male atmosphere in the West currently. Like men basically have no clubs where they can just hang out with other men, besides maybe sports, but that's changing as well. It used like for the most part it is this way with Warhammer, but as companies see that they want to make money from both genders, both sexes, um, they try and reach across the aisle. So, for example, Warhammer has an army where it is nuns, right? That is basically women monks, right? They're called nuns in English, Nuns. And yeah, they have a whole army of them because they were trying to get girls to play because they just want money, right? Um, and there was a lot of push against Warhammer. Well, it's all about war and killing and things like that, so it's mostly going to appeal to men anyways. Right? The next thing here is women are more caring than men. Yeah, I'd say overall. And there's a stereotype: if you are a caring man, then you are seen as feminine, right? Typically. Uh, yeah, and women give birth, right? That's it. And I know that is a controversial statement in the West now. Um, Likewise, another very funny controversial statement, if you really want to rile people up, is to say Islam is right about women, right? So that will very much anger people on the left, because those are two things that they care very much about. They care about Islam and they care about women, right? And what does Islam say about women is that women are inferior to men. That's why they should cover up and always listen to their husbands, or at least have a man direct them around. Yeah, so quite a funny thing to say there. Islam is right about women. Um, the yeah, and so it makes sense for women to be stay-at-home moms because they give birth, and like, do you really want a stranger to be taking care of your children? Throughout all of human history, that was considered pretty crazy, all right, for a stranger to take care of your children, because the stranger doesn't actually care about them, right? For the stranger, it's just a job. And I mean this about nannies, I mean this about teachers, I mean this about preschool directors, every sort of thing, right? So they don't have a stake, as much of a stake in your child as you do. And it is quite interesting to see the political leanings of people is The more children they have, the more conservative they are because they are thinking about the future for their own children. Um, and if you don't have any children, then you only think about the here and now, right? And you have to find something else to be concerned with, right? The next one, men are better at telling jokes than women. Yeah, I'd say it's quite true. Um, Especially like the most famous example of women comedians is Amy Schumer, unfortunately. And all she does is like pee-pee jokes, right? Like, haha, it smells bad. Like it's not funny, the stuff she jokes about. And that's why her ratings were quite bad. And when she came out with a Netflix special, the ratings were so bad for it that Netflix removed the rating system. So they actually had to cheat, to make sure that it wasn't represented how nobody liked this. It's the same for YouTube, right? They got rid of the thumbs down count. You can't see that anymore. It's pretty crazy. There are apps that will show you it, but in general, if you're just a regular person, you can't see the thumbs down. Um, and women talk more than men. I I think it depends on personality. It's like men make better bosses than women, right? I talk a lot more than a lot of women that I know. On the other hand, when I'm teaching, my whole job is just to, besides teaching grammar, teaching vocab, and practicing English, it's to actively listen to what students are saying and to ask insightful questions, right? And not just easy yes or no questions, but questions that make them think. And often when I'm teaching, I try not to speak. Um, and this way, students get a lot of time to talk. And I try not to interrupt the flow of conversation because it makes them more confident, right? When they're just talking and talking and talking. Um, so it is quite interesting. I can turn it off if it needs, right? Um, Otherwise, I was a caller. I called alumni. Alumni are people who graduated from a university, and I asked them for money. And so I had to be able to convince and cajole and persuade them. Cajole means to nag, right? To say like, hey, you better give money because you want your kids to have a good future here, right? So I became quite good at talking. Yeah, so as for that, I think it's 50-50, no difference. Um, and I think if guys are just, we call it banter or BSing, right? Just talking back and forth, we could talk for ages, right? Um, and then next one, men are better at navigating than women. Yeah, I think for sure our brains are wired differently. And whenever I travel with other women, like my wife or her sister, um, I can really picture a map in my mind's eye, and I can really know where I'm going. Um, but when it comes to place names, right, if I don't associate that name with a place, then I'll miss it. But otherwise, yeah, it's really easy to navigate for us. There's an old stereotype of like when a guy is driving with his family and he gets lost and he refuses to ask for directions, right? And so they keep getting lost and lost and lost. And so it was a push in TV and in movies to show like, no, men are not better at navigating. But again, those things aren't real life. Um, Women are worse at math than men. Um, I think generally we're predisposed to enjoy different things. Likewise, there's something called a bell curve for both men and women about intelligence. And it's pretty proven fact. So, for example, like typically there are a lot more um, average women, right? Like average IQ women, and a lot less like very stupid women and very smart women, right? A lot less. And then for guys, there's not so many average men, but a lot more stupid men and a lot more smart men. And that's just how the bell curve goes, especially for IQ. Quite an interesting fact. Um, and so that's why when you think about all the scientists and everything, they're all typically men. Um, Likewise, because women are predisposed to have children and take care of them, they generally focus on things related with beauty, things related with the house and homekeeping. For example, my wife is her hobby is makeup, right? And so she's very interested in makeup videos and doing her own makeup. Whereas I am interested in Warhammer, right? And I could never be interested in makeup um, because I think it's just painting your face. Like for me, it's very fake. And when I was in high school, um, if I saw a girl with makeup and without makeup, I thought they were two different girls, right? And so it took me a very long time to understand that it was one person, right? And likewise in high school, I came from private school with very little people to a really big school, and I didn't really have girlfriends in high school. I played airsoft, I played Warhammer, and it was really hard for me to talk to girls in high school. Um, until I had a fantastic AP psychology teacher, which means AP, it's college level, right? University level. Um, and I would spend, right? She was a lady, or she is a lady, right? She's not dead, but uh, I spent my free times talking with her, and it really got me over being able to talk to ladies. Um, and then when I went almost too much, right? Because when I went to university, I dated a bunch of women, right? So I had like three girlfriends at one time, and I would cheat on all of them. Really, really bad thing to do. I don't recommend it to anybody. Um, it wasn't, I didn't really have any hard stops to it either. Uh, until I went over to Russia and I was like, all right, I'm breaking up with everybody. All right, we're getting prepared for Russia. Um, and then that's when I met my wife, and and orthodoxy as well. I think for me, I really needed very strong, very hard and fast, strict rules. Um, Likewise, there's a lot more autistic men than there are of women. Like I said, we're either really stupid or really smart. Things like that. And we always say it's a fine line between genius and madness. Um, yeah, but going on, so men are more competitive than women. Mm, I would say in general, yes. That's why, we've had fighting for so long throughout all the centuries. Uh, Likewise, there should be two separate sports categories. This was a big controversy in the West, where men pretending to be women would join the women's sports and just beat them outright, um, almost without any training. It's quite funny. Uh, and I think it's still going on. It's really wild over there. Um, and there's another famous example of like a high school boys soccer team beat um, the women's national soccer team. I think it was of Australia. You guys can look that up. Just high school boys team beats, yeah, national team, right? So it's such a big difference, just in strength that they're not even in their own categories. Um, and women panic more than men in stressful situations. I would say generally the guys I know, and the women, ladies I know, generally, yeah, men seem to be a bit more calm. We're a lot more introspective, or at least the people that I know. And so you keep it bottled up, right? Your whatever you're thinking, your emotions, whatever. Um, and so you deal with it on your own. And I think that's why, yeah, there's a lot more monks than there are of nuns, right? Um, a bit because of that, right? And last one, women can multitask better than men. I think this whole multitasking thing, it was a fad, or it got very popular for a little bit. And I think it's a lie. Like, you cannot multitask, actually. You're just switching your focus. And that's it, right? Just either I'm focusing on this and then I switch to this. Um, and I think both men and women are bad at it. Um, Otherwise, again, don't forget to share this with your friends, right? I think next time it's going to be, let me check. Uh, Yep, so next time it'll be manners and politeness, as well as grammar of obligation, prohibition, and phone language. Phone language, super easy. Same with obligation. It's super easy grammar also. Um, Now, don't forget these idioms, right? Crying wolf, palm off, have bigger fish to fry, as well as when you're introducing something, you're going to be using a, right? If it's random. If you're talking about something specific, you're going to be using the as well. Um, so if you'd like to check out my books, right? I write fantasy. If you'd like to get a lesson, check out Every Week English. Dot tilde dot ws, or if you'd like to reach out to me personally, send me an email at everyweekenglish@outlook.com. Keep speaking that English and have a wonderful week, everybody.